Congressman Schiff, so much of what we read in this indictment today that reads as familiar to us is because of the work of your committee, like that testimony from Rusty Bowers, which is right there in the indictment as part of the charged crimes. What is your feeling tonight about the way Jack Smith took what you handed to him?
Well, you know, I think all of us on the committee feel that our work mattered, that the facts that we brought to the public attention, that we brought to the attention of the Justice Department were integral to their decision to charge and how they charged. I think that the special counsel did what he did with the Mar-a-Lago case, which is charge it conservatively, not charge everything that he might, but charge the strongest counts where the evidence best fit the facts and the law. I think that's exactly what he's done. This is also kind of a interesting situation in that the public has seen a lot of this evidence through the January 6th hearings. So it's unusual in that the country doesn't usually get to see a trial before the trial takes place. But we've seen a lot of these witnesses already. We've heard their testimony. We've been able to evaluate some of their credibility. And perhaps it's appropriate here because, as Professor Tribe was pointing out, there'll be a trial on this. There'll be a verdict, we hope, on this. But ultimately, the American people may have the final say. So, as we've seen before, there are two juries. There's the jury that's going to try this case, and then there's the jury of the American people that may be called upon to decide, do they want someone capable of committing these acts in the Oval Office who would be therefore, capable of undoing justice that may be served in this trial?
You know, I find myself thinking in the first few minutes of having this indictment in my hands today and reading it, where would we be tonight if Speaker Nancy Pelosi had not appointed a special January 6th committee?
Well, you're absolutely right, Lawrence. That was the foundational decision that made this possible, the decision to create that committee. When you'll remember, there were bipartisan negotiations around a commission. The Republican and Democrat who were in charge of those discussions came to an agreement, and then it was rejected by McCarthy, I'm sure at the urging of Trump. And what they got was this select committee. Had that commission gone forward, the rules were that either party could have essentially vetoed any subpoena. But instead, we had a select committee with real teeth. The Speaker also made a hugely consequential decision not to seat two of the would-be insurrectionists, Jim Jordan and Jim Banks, on the committee, and instead to seat Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger. And that made all the difference because suddenly witnesses would come forward who would not have come forward otherwise. The hearings were worth watching because these witnesses came forward. And it didn't devolve into the usual kind of congressional circus. So you're right. In so many ways, had Nancy Pelosi not been Speaker, I shudder to think what would have been of our democracy in its entirety. But certainly, I don't think we would have gotten to today where the work of that committee was so much a part of this indictment.
We have more detail in this indictment than your committee was able to get because Jack Smith could compel former Vice President Mike Pence's testimony under oath, and so we now have that. But it fits, and it's exactly what we kind of expected it to be. There's some new quotes, like Donald Trump telling Mike Pence, "You're too honest." But were there any surprises in this indictment for you? Other than small bits of dialogue that we hadn't come across before?
You know, Lawrence, the surprise, if anything, was how closely it tracked the work of our committee. The new information, as you say, came from witnesses, Pence, Cipollone, others, who either wouldn't talk to us at all in the case of Pence or in the case of Cipollone, wouldn't answer questions about their direct conversations with the president. I think what stood out to me is the same as what stood out to Andrew, and probably because I'm a former Justice Department person, and that is Jeffrey Clark. Just the arrogance of saying, in response to being pointed out by one of the counsel that if you try to stay in office, there are going to be riots in every city in America. His response is, well, that's what the Insurrection Act is for. Just the arrogance of that, the willingness to put the country through that frankly, it reminded me of something Bill Barr said before he decided not to cross. He finally found a line he wouldn't cross when he was asked about how history would reflect on his work. And his answer was something to the effect of, well, we'll be writing the history. A lot of that hubris really came out in this indictment, and in particular, that conversation with Jeffrey Clark.